welcome back to the Director's Garage. That was a strike. I am your host and resident idiot, Michael, and today, folks, we are back on the electrostatic train. And today, I'm pulling out all the stops as I break down the sound of this STAX SR-X9000. And what I'm going to describe today is the sound of a headphone that I believe resets the bar on reference sound. And I'd argue that that old bar was set by this headphone right here, the Hifiman Susvara. This is the standard for reference detail and balance if you have a painfully expensive amp to send the Susvara into the sonic stratosphere. Well, now with the X9000, you just need an energizer that will kill your budget on an already wallet-busting ear speaker whose price is a whopping $6,500. Why do we do this? All right. I'm also going to compare this headphone with both the Susvara and the Audeze CRBN, or CRBN, later in this episode. And I'm going to reveal how you can turn the X9000 into a solid challenger for the Abyss 1266 TC. How's that for a tease? Yeah, boy. This is going to be a long one, so let's dig in. So the ergos on the SR-X9000, I've actually talked about quite a bit on this show. Y'all know how I've nicked these things for the Allen head screws that sit around the edge of the cup. They sit proud of the bezel, very un-STAX-like. And then the metal band, why not carbon fiber? The ridiculous tacked-in damper on the top, a damper that would be completely unnecessary had STAX simply done what they did 20 years earlier with the SR-007 Mark I, just wrap it in soft leather. But let's back all of this down a bit. Despite their head-shaking design choices, these things are generally prettier in person than they are in the photos. The floating screens are pretty damn cool. The swivel mechanism, nice and smooth. The weight, these things are reasonably light and very comfortable. I'd prefer a deeper cup so my ears wouldn't touch the fabric and add some cushy to the design. And I gotta dole out a compliment because nearly all of the toy-grade plastic has been removed from this design, giving these a more premium feel over their previous builds like the SR-009S. I did say nearly. This mechanism where you set the length of the yoke, that's still Fisher-Price-worthy cheap plastic. I just wish that STAX, for more than $6,000, would come up with a better design using carbon fiber or innovative materials like Meze or Yamaha with their magnesium chassis. There's still plenty of room for improvement on these ergos, but in some ways, this is a step forward too. Most importantly is what the ergos are missing, and that is the notorious driver flex, or say it with me, STAX farts.
Oh,
okay. I've had these for nearly 6 months now, and I haven't once popped or shorted or done anything other than produce gorgeous sound. And that is a huge step forward because my greatest knock on the Audeze is that driver flex situation. That headphone produces so many annoying pops and zaps, it's nearly a deal breaker. Now the SR-X9000 does get warm like every other electrostatic because there's very little breathability for you once these things have a seal around your ears. I'm going to talk about why you might break that seal, though, coming up. On warm days, these things aren't so great, but these are an improvement in nearly every other way to the SR-009S, the former STAX flagship, though I gotta confess I prefer the SR-009S's sleeker appearance. Now about that breaking the seal situation. Now this is something no one else has talked about with the SR-X9000, and we're about to bridge into the sound section, and here's where ergonomics touches the sound. And I'm talking about driver placement and orientation. you can do some ridiculously cool things with the sound by changing the driver orientation. If you break the seal down below your ears, pull these cups out a little, you get a very Abyss 1266-like effect out of a headphone that is much faster than the 1266. The bass gains impact and depth, maybe at the expense of a little bit of detail. It's really, really cool, and I'm surprised that no one else has discovered this. There is room for modding this headphone and further tuning it based on driver placement, changing up the bass presence and spatial dynamics of this entire operation. Yes, there is room to grow on your $6,500 electrostatic headphone. This is something I discovered by accident very late in the reviewing process. I was just playing around one night and I found out there is a whole world of untapped potential with this headphone. But mods aside, these things are like strapping a premium listening room on your head. Like, you know how you go into one of those boutique audiophile places where they put a $100,000 turntable and run it through hundreds of pounds of gear and play them through giant Magnapans or Vandersteen 7s or some crazy $50,000 speakers, and then you set it all in one of those crazy treated rooms where there aren't any right angles and there's sound absorbing panels on the walls and ceilings, and a fancy rug under your feet. This is that feel. This is like you're transporting yourself into a premium listening room. Everything sounds perfectly placed. It sounds refined, like you're tasting caviar and having champagne dreams. Apologies to Robin Leach. This isn't always a great thing. Sometimes you kind of just want to rock out with impact or deep chill with something smooth and mellow. Whereas this headphone is all proper and perfect. It's almost like it's British. Cheerio! So stupid. All right, let's talk about detail, because as you might expect, detail is one of the many stars of this show. It's insane detail, crazy bumped up on cocaine detail where every sense is heightened and you pick up the most subtle of subtle effects, no matter how buried in the mix. This thing manages to find a place for a fart in a windstorm. Yep, I just picked up a whiff. Hey! Okay, you pick up everything. If you are a detail whore, this is the answer. Nothing. Sayonara Susvara, See Ya Caldera, Adios Abyss, later LCDs. There is nothing I've heard, probably including the HE1, that can resolve with the SR-X9000. You do not miss anything, no matter how subtle, a tick on a cymbal, a whisper underneath someone's voice. You catch it all, and it's impressive. So much so, I could see how some people would find it too much. But there's still a silkiness with this headphone, so it all kind of comes out wonderful. Like, the detail is there, but it's never really shoved down your throat the way some other hyper detailed headphones do. Now, the imaging on the SR-X9000 is brilliant. Everything is specific. It's locked in and sitting on the head of a pin. It's utter perfection, as you might expect from a headphone of this caliber. This images with the best of the best. Susvara, Carbon, Caldera, just pick your poison. The image is just spot on. And the same holds true with the soundstage. These do not disappoint at all. Decay extends out to the furthest reaches. The soundstage is on a par with the Abyss 1266 TC, which is probably the best soundstage I've ever auditioned. This isn't good soundstage, it's great soundstage. It's holographic, it's wide. There's space for every sound, an absolute delight. Realism. Absolutely. You get that sense of the instrument in the room with you. These work best on any acoustic instrument. A sax is a sax, a string bass is a string bass. These things are as realistic as the Susvara. They're maybe less impressive with like synth stuff and drums. The speed of a drum is there, but the impact of the drums is lacking that physicality of some of the other headphones I have. More on that a little bit later, but violins, pianos, vocals, on audiophile recordings, you'd swear they're right in the room with you. Now, speaking of speed, this is the fastest headphone I've heard. Period. It's faster than the Carbon, faster than the Susvara. There is no commercial headphone that can compete with the speed of the SR-X9000, in my opinion. Every note, vocal, string, hammer, key, all of it is just a tick slower than light speed. Blazing fast headphone. If you like the bleeding edge of the note, the crispness, precision, focused instruments, you won't get better than this headphone. What's amazing is that despite all of this speed, they're not jarring. There's still a smoothness that you wouldn't expect from a headphone this fast. Yeah, technically, there is no better headphone I've ever heard. The dynamics on the SR-X9000 are terrific for an electrostatic, and I can't stress that enough, for an electrostatic. Because once you start A/B'ing these things with headphones that have sensational dynamics, like the Abyss 1266TC, the Audeze LCD4, and the Dan Clark Expanse, you realize that even though the dynamics are pretty good in isolation, these don't stack up, pardon the pun, to their planar and dynamic driver counterparts. They lack the physicality that other headphones bring when they punch. In this way, the SR-X9000 is very Susvara-like. Supreme detail everywhere, reference sound, but they won't whomp you. Unless you start playing around with that orientation. You pull these out, and you can get some slam effects that will surprise and awe you. Alright, so you already have the most precise, wide, realistic, and fast headphone I've ever heard, but how does this apply when it comes to sound structure? I'm talking treble and mids and bass, and there's not a chance I'm doing it in that order. And I'm starting with the bass because the bass is one of the best electrostatic bass experiences I've heard. Note I said one of. Yeah, the others would be the Carbon and the SR-007. There's crazy bass resolution and texture, excellent extension down into the sub, but nothing approaching pure slam. And as we'll see in a minute, bass will be a major delineation between the SR-X9000 and the Audeze Carbon. Now let's talk Beach Boys and their masterpiece, Pet Sounds. And I'm going to pull a deep track for you. It's called You Still Believe in Me because of its instrumentation. It's a bass masterpiece in the most subtle way. You have two electric bass guitars, a contrabass clarinet, an acoustic double bass, plus a timpani. Whoa, there's a lot going on down low. Yet it's not a bass dominant song. Most other headphones will kind of blend all of this instrumentation into kind of a soupy fill. The X9000 keeps everything blended, but you can really make out that instrumentation brilliantly. About the only thing I've heard better on other headphones is the impact of the timpani. Everything else, it's just a perfect example that shows off the resolving power and the detail of the bass simultaneously. It's an amazing track for the X9000. I'll give you one counterpoint here, and that's hip-hop. Now, I was listening to one of my favorite all-time hip-hop albums, Sex Packets by Digital Underground. Now, I love the humor of this album, but it's an album that seriously needs a bass response in your headphone. And on this one, the X9000 falls short. I actually preferred that album on the OG, the 20-year-old SR-007 Mark I for that album. It's kind of cool that a headphone this old can compete with two modern electrostatics. Best mid headphone, period. Lifelike, no hint of harshness or honk. The SR-X9000 out-mids the Susvara. It's really the first headphone I can recall, other than maybe the LCD5, that approaches or tops what the Susvara can do in the mids. It does all the things, and it does it with this airiness that no other headphone does. It's not about the note. It's about the harmonics and the harmonic resonance and how accurately the SR-X9000 reproduces resonance. Here's what I mean. When you hit the middle C note on a piano, a real piano, you don't just hear the string the hammer hits. You hear resonance from the C below it, and the C below that, and the C above it, and the C above that. Because the act of the string vibrating inside the piano, it introduces a sound wave that excites the other C strings in the instrument, and they begin to vibrate along with the note that was actually hammered out. No one ever talks about this shit when they're discussing headphones. Harmonics are what give an instrument its tone, and a headphone's lifelike reproduction. When a bass player hits a hard note, if there's a piano in the room, or an acoustic guitar, or the other instruments, including the drum skins, interact with the sound of that bass note. Ever been in a rock concert and the bass player hits a note and you'd swear that you just heard the snare vibrate along with it? That, folks, is harmonic resonance. Engineers spend hours playing with the mic placement to eliminate harmonic resonance. But in sound reproduction, the more accurate the harmonic resonance, the more lifelike the instrument or the band or the music sounds. And that's why I believe the SR-X9000 has the best mids on the market. And that, of course, leaves treble. I don't know what this is, but what I love about the treble of the SR-X9000 is how it interacts with the soundstage. Because of its extreme resolution, when a brush hits a cymbal, it resonates and dissipates more gradually into nothing than any other top-tier headphone I've heard. The sound drifts away rather than that shorter staccato decay. There's a delicate nature to the treble that sets the SR-X9000 apart. I'm kind of hesitant to use the word ethereal because it implies some sort of vagueness, and there's nothing vague about the X9000, but the way the instruments waft away, like say on a triangle or a bell, there is something ethereal about the way it sounds. It's one of the best experiences in treble I've heard. The treble just floats as if suspended. All right, the music section. And I'm going to pull out a big gun here. My favorite jazz pianist, Thelonious Monk, and my favorite Monk album of all time, Alone in San Francisco. And why this album is the album to listen to on the SR-X9000? Well, first, you've got the most articulate and realistic piano I've ever heard. Let's start right there. You've never had that sense of the piano being right in the room with me. Okay, well, there's a great start. But then you consider Thelonious was a tremendously physical pianist. He worked the instrument. Brubeck, Evans, Peterson, Duke, and Tatum, they floated on the keys. Think about Art Tatum's tremendous runs. His touch was so fantastic. Thelonious, on the other hand, he punished the instrument. He commanded it to deliver what he was punching out. Every dissonant chord, fill, and melody, I've never heard anyone deliver an intentional awkwardness of dissonance the way that Thelonious did. He challenged you to listen along with his melodies. The notes sound kind of wrong, but oh so right. His version of the bebop language was the strangest and most engaging dialect of all the pianists of his generation. He'd add a ninth or a diminished note in what sounds like a completely sloppy manner, then do an absolutely clean scale run across the time he was keeping. And his internal clock ran at a different pace than the rest of us. He intentionally abused the listener and the instrument. Once you get it, truly get it, it's like understanding Salvador Dali for the first time. It's like suddenly understanding Russian. He's the most rewarding musician I've ever heard. He used the dynamic capability of the instrument unlike any other jazz pianist. I can feel the piano flexing under his tremendous effort. He was playing the life out of that thing. Then there's the monkisms. Thelonious was a vocal instrumentalist. He's humming along and grunting his way through all the songs. You can hear all of his and as he's banging out a riff. And the SR-X9000, you're even getting to hear the pedals getting worked along with his feet tapping out a beat he was playing against. The SR-X9000 delivered the best presentation of this mind-blowing collection. It's a headphone that puts you on stage with the great, and I savored every last note. I promised you guys some comparisons, and first up is going to be the Carbon. Now, that's the headphone that caused me to pick up the Alphabet amp in the first place, all right? Now, for this battle, I went straight to the DSD version of Steely Dan's Gaucho. Supremely detailed tracks here. This is really a big moment. This is like an electrostatic title fight, okay? Now, hang with me. I'm going to go through this really quick. The Carbon took the bass title from the X9000 right out of the gate. There's greater impact down low with the Carbon, though it can't reproduce texture the way the X9000 can. But the X9000 roared back with a wider and more dimensional stage. The Carbon is more physical, the X9000 more lofty and airier. Both are supremely detailed. I might give the X9000 the slightest of edge on the detail. The Carbon had more aggression on the treble, but not glaring or bright. Cymbals hit with greater impact, but the X9000 was more natural and open up top, with a gentle shimmer on the cymbals, and a bit more detail too. The Carbon had more bite. The X9000 was more like sitting in that fine listening room. The Carbon is more in your face. Frankly, I like both of these for different reasons. The big negative on the Carbon is the Stax farts. The Carbon jolts you every time you take them off your head. The X9000 doesn't produce a single pop. As far as a winner, well, if I'm listening to rock or metal, industrial or hip-hop, yeah, the Carbon is the better choice for its physicality and aggression. If I'm listening to jazz or softer genres, the X9000 is the way to go. As far as air goes, well, the Carbon is more comfortable, I think it's more attractive, and it's better built. It's kind of a meze-like experience. But the X9000 doesn't pop or fart, so I kind of got to give it an edge. Overall, there wasn't really a clear winner. It came down to genre. Both deliver supreme listening experiences. Back to Steely Dan, on Time Out of Mind, I like the splash of the cymbals and the openness of the X9000, but the Carbon involved me more and delivered a greater emotional impact. I preferred the Carbon over the X9000 on Steely Dan. Now, another great audition was Pink Floyd Echoes off their album Metal. Well, it's really kind of the swan song of Pink Floyd's psychedelic era, and it's kind of the bridge to what would follow for the band. The X9000 gave a greater presentation of the copious effect work due to its greater soundstage, but it's a little leaner down low, especially in the sound effects sections of the track, whereas the Carbon gave a more emotional feel due to the bass presence. Now, there is a speed difference to be heard on Echoes. The X9000 sounded a bit snappier to the note, and it's a wetter sound on the X9000, which I have to believe is closer to the spirit of this song. It is called Echoes, after all. It's about reverb and this emotional journey. There's ethereal sections, and then there are hard driving solos where the stage collapses. The Carbon was more dynamic in pulling the stage in and out. The aggression is beefier and weightier, but the X9000 always kept the wider stage. Striking differences in this iconic track, I preferred the X9000. Some side notes here. What really surprised me when I was A-Bing the Carbon and the X9000 is that as impressed as I was with the bass on the X9000 and that sound impression, by direct comparison, the bass on the Carbon is significantly stronger, though it's less detailed. The Carbon is more like a meze elite with greater speed and a little less bass presence. The X9000 is more like a better, more refined Susvara. And being completely transparent, I was prepared for the X9000 to completely waste the carbon in almost every area, and it absolutely did not. Huge props to Audeze. Keep in mind, the carbon is Audeze's first electrostatic effort, and to jump in toe-to-toe with a manufacturer who's owned the electrostatic space and ear speakers for 50 years, that's crazy impressive. All right, another title fight, the X9000 versus the Susvara. And I turned to David Bowie's Black Star for this A-B comparison. The difference was immediate. The X9000 produces more detail, more impactful bass, and, a huge surprise, a wider, more dimensional soundstage. Decay fades away with greater smoothness on the X9000. There's a better holographic effect on the stage, and the stage appears to be wider. The Susvara produced something of a thicker sound, which I found less desirable than the spread out sound of the X9000. To my ears, the bass had greater detail and better punch on the X9000. Now, this isn't to say that the X9000 approaches anything close to actual slam, but I felt the bass hit with stronger authority on the X9000 than the Susvara. The Susvara is really the most fair comparison I could come up with. Both have similar sounds and are striving for the same goals. Now, I found the Susvara to be more comfortable, and they don't make your ears as hot in the process. Now, both of these headphones did an excellent job of separating out the dense and complex material that Bowie put together on his final album. The X9000, for me, delivered a more enjoyable, connected experience. If you're looking for a Susvara-like experience, I think the X9000 kind of takes it to the next level. All right, I got to start trying to wrap this all up somehow, guys. So let me start with this. The STAX SR-X9000 is a masterpiece. It delivers the best technical sound reproduction of any consumer headphone or ear speaker I've heard. It transports you to the finest listening rooms in the world, and it delivers an uncompromising presentation of music. On tonality, it's a reference sound of the highest degree. The Susvara is, or was, the best reference headphone, along with the Audeze LCD5. This not only leaves both products behind, it drops them. If you're looking for the best reference sounding headphone out there, this is the best I've heard. Paired with the Lena and the Mullner Alphabet amp, it's one of the best listening stations I've ever heard for a pure audiophile experience. So, is this my favorite headphone? Well, for jazz, probably. For classical, definitely. Easy listening and softer rock, I'm talking like Beatles, Beach Boys, Simon and Garfunkel, Dylan, anything with a lot of instrumentation and acoustic instruments. Well, short of maybe the HE1, which I really don't factor because no one can afford it, you really won't find better. But for many other genres, and you know my tastes, they wander all over the map. I like metal and hip-hop and hard rock and pop and southern rock and electric blues, and, well, this isn't the headphone I choose. I enjoy greater bass impact for those genres, and the Carbon delivers more impact, but so does the STAX S007 Mk, the Abyss, the Caldera, the LCD4, and the Meze Elite. I'll do a mega shootout later to sort it all out, but also keep this in the back of your head. This thing has serious potential to meet those other headphones in bass performance with some clever mods like pulling the drivers off your ear. That makes the SR-X9000 a serious contender where it lags with normal seal and placement. So the takeaway is this: the SR-X9000 is one of the finest sound experiences you can have, and they deliver thrills and goosebumps that few other headphones and ear speakers can provide. These things can take you on sonic journeys. So that's my review of the STAX SR-X9000, a $6,500 piece of audiophile insanity. I love them, seriously. They are the Grey Poupon of head-fi. You can't drink a beer with these folks. It's going to be a single malt from the top shelf. And you got to extend your pinky while you do it. They are special, though. I took a break from electrostatics for about a month before shooting this video, and then I went back to the SR-X9000 just before I made it. It gave me fresh ears on this headphone, and yeah, these things are an experience and honestly probably worth their outrageous price if you happen to listen to music that presents well on them. Coming up, I have a mystery What's in the Box, courtesy of our friends at Audio 46, where you can pick up this SR-X9000 if you want. Just use the coupon code Director's Garage, all one word, because these things are expensive and I get a little kickback, folks. Okay, totally shameless. Hey, subscribe to the channel, why not? It costs less than Hulu, that's for sure, and it's all original. Give this episode a thumbs up if you enjoyed my review of the SR-X9000. Or you can do the other thing if you wish I'd taken a bath with the Blue Hawaii while it's plugged in. I can't say I blame you either way, and I will see you before you know it.